Good day, everyone. So our topic is about declarative, procedural, and functional knowledge. So these are the learning outcomes. First, determine the various types of knowledge. Differentiate declarative, procedural, and functional knowledge, and recognize the role of types of knowledge in facilitating learner-centered teaching. So this will be our lesson outline: declarative, procedural, and functional. So, meaning that our discussion will only flow around these three categories of knowledge: declarative, procedural, and functional. So, let us now define or and analyze the three classifications of knowledge. No, um, as future teachers, you have to understand that these classifications of knowledge play a significant role in understanding your students and in facilitating learner-centered teaching. So declarative, procedural, and functional. So let us begin with declarative knowledge. So declarative knowledge is the information acquired that one can speak about. So let me ask you, so what are the information that you can always speak about? So there are a lot of information that we can easily tell, like your name, no, basically your name, your age, your address, or what is the center of the solar system, or what is a noun, or what are verbs, or who is our national hero. No, so this information that one can speak about is known as declarative knowledge. All about the things we know or can declare. Okay, so as long as we know it and we can declare or we can say it, then it is part of declarative knowledge. And this includes facts, events that can be stored and easily be recalled. So, like the color of your shirt that you wore yesterday, or the date of your birthday, anniversary, monthsary, and so on. So these are the subtypes of declarative knowledge cognition. So first, labels and names. So we can always recall and we can declare these labels and names, like what is the label for this name or what is the name for that particular label. So in that sense, there is what we call as pairing of information. Facts and list describing relationships. So we can easily recall this kind of information. So once you recall it, you can easily tell that particular information. So later on, we'll talk about what is the significance of this declarative knowledge or procedural knowledge or even functional knowledge in the teaching learning processes, specifically during your future facilitation of learner-centered teaching. And organizational discourse, thread of meaning running throughout. So let us now look into the strategies that you can use whenever you would like to access declarative knowledge among your students. So basically, declarative knowledge is the first kind of knowledge that we can always encounter among our students. First thing that you have to do is linking new information to existing knowledge. So if you will recall, one of the theories of learning is that to you have to connect the new lesson to the old lesson. So from known, the old lesson to the unknown. So in that case, that is actually declarative knowledge. No, so you have to link the new information to the existing knowledge. So that's the reason why before you start your class, you have to ask your students to recall knowledge that they know that is connected to the new topic that you are going to discuss. Most of the time, these are the lessons that you have finished the other day or yesterday. But there are cases when there's a new topic and that is no longer connected to the previous lesson. So, but still, there are other lessons where you can connect the new lesson. So, as stated, to learn and recall new information, learners have to tie new knowledge to knowledge that they already possess. So by linking new information to existing knowledge, learners make the information more meaningful. So actually, sometimes no teachers tend to neglect the importance of this recall. No, um, it doesn't mean also that when the students always tell the old knowledge, no, you can easily connect that to the new knowledge. So there should be connection. So doesn't mean that you started your lesson with your lesson yesterday. You might say, this is a recall. So we are now recalling the previous lesson. You have to remember that there should be link between the new information to the existing knowledge. So meaning to say that the knowledge that you have to recall should be a knowledge that is connected to the new lesson or to the new information that you are going to tell your students. So next is organizing. So putting new information into groups also helps in learning of declarative knowledge. So displacement of information also involves placing it into different areas of memory. So there are cases when there is a possible knowledge overload or there are too much information that we are giving to our students. So we have to group them. We have to categorize this knowledge. So it's like eating huge size of bread, no? So a large size of bread. So you cannot just put everything in your mouth. So you have to chunk it into pieces. So in chunking that into pieces, to, you have to cut it into pieces into smaller chunks. Now, you have to categorize or you have to group this information, no, so that they can be able to connect that to their existing knowledge, and this can also place them in the different areas of memory. No, so because in our mind, in our brain, so there are different areas for memory, and you have to group the new information according to that. So that's why the term is organizing. So another one is elaborating. So making connections among the information being received as well as connecting new information to existing knowledge. So um, it is not enough that you can be able to connect the old knowledge to the new information. So there should be the students should make connections, no? So making connections among the information being received. So meaning to say that there are a lot of information that your students may receive from you. So among those information, so they have to connect each information so that upon connecting those information, it can be connected to the old or to the existing knowledge. Now, in that case, the students should explore the knowledge or the information that you are sharing with them. And of course, in order to do so, you have to provide a lot of activities in order for them to do that. As I've said, it has something to do with facilitating learner-centered teaching. So meaning to say that you will not discuss, no? It is more into the students will be the one doing it. So in order for them to do that, you have to provide different learning activities to them. So another one is that the conditions needed to support declarative knowledge, learners are dependent upon the instructional strategy tool being used. So in that case, it is dependent on the approach that you are going to give them. What is the tool that you are going to use in order for them to absorb the new information that you are giving them? Well, of course, in this particular case, the resourcefulness and creativity of the teacher will come uh, will come into play. So organization strategies, classification frames, concept mapping, advanced organizers, metaphoric techniques, rehearsal strategies, mnemonics, and imagery are all strategy tools that can be used during a declarative knowledge lesson. Okay, so um, let us this talk about some of these examples. No, so for example, concept mapping. So let's say you are talking about a lot of information. No, let's say you are talking about different dates in the history of the Philippines. Now, you can ask your students the concept map. Okay, so it's like a flow chart, but a concept map should have inside the box there should be um, keywords, but you have to connect those keywords by putting a line together, but you have to write also what's the meaning of that line. So, for example, the main idea will be broken down into two. So, what's that? Is that classified as or divided into two? So, something like that. So, there should be connecting words among those boxes. So, do not just put there arrows, arrow to the left, arrow to the right, arrow down, arrow up, but you have to include the connecting words among those arrows. So what's that? Is it produced or is it divided into two, divided into five? So depends upon on the kind of concept map that you are doing. Another one is mnemonics. No, I am very particular in mnemonics because this is very helpful in recalling facts. No, so for example, um, you have to think of a sentence wherein it will you can be able to make an acronym, and that acronym will serve as the mnemonics in a certain idea. No, so a very good example is that in science, the election configuration, if you can recall that the SPDF, no, the flow there, I can still remember my high school teacher or even my college teacher, they both have the same mnemonics for that. So it goes like this. Si Susan pumasok sa pinto, si Daddy pumasok sa door, blah, 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 and so on and so forth. So that's mnemonic. So si Susan, so that is double S, S, S. Okay, so as long as you know the flow, then you can easily recall a certain information that is very important. So another one is that beside these tools, there are also techniques that should be used throughout the organization of a lesson. All right, so let us now proceed to procedural knowledge. So refers to what one can do and what is able to do. Okay. So knowledge that a person knows to do, which can better be expressed by doing it than explaining. So in declarative, you know the knowledge, and you can always state it. You can always say it. In procedural, instead of telling the knowledge, you have to express by doing it. Okay. So let's say, for example, you would like to recall how to add or how to multiply. So instead of saying that in order to add or in order to multiply, you have to do this and that. All you have to do, if it is procedural, you have to express by doing it. Like it's like, oh, can you tell me how to draw a person or how to paint a person, how to make a collage. So instead of telling the step by step in doing such, procedural knowledge is done by expressing, by doing it instead of explaining. So these are the strategies in improving procedural knowledge. Incorporate opportunities for teaching with data, including representations of geologic phenomena throughout development or use of models. So you have to use models, no? You have to use you have to ask your students to express themselves not by explaining it, but by doing it or by demonstrating it. So that's why there are cases when teachers will ask the class to Okay, class, I want you to make a dance presentation about the topic. Okay, so even though it is not about dance, it is about the expression. So even though it is the topic's not about singing, but it's about expressing. Okay, so we need to say that instead of explaining it, so they can do it. No, so they have to demonstrate it. So as part of a lesson, as part of the classroom learning, have students draw, analyze graphs, manipulate data, fold papers, bend toothpicks, describe photographs, scratch minerals, interpret maps, and plot data. So it is just a matter of subject matter. So what will be the subject matter or what kind of content that you are going to discuss to your students? Of course, it depends upon on the topic, no? So you cannot force your students to describe a photograph if it has nothing to do with your topic, or you cannot tell them to bend the toothpicks without connecting it to your topic, or scratch minerals, for example. So again, in this case, depends upon on the content, and also depends upon on the teacher, on the creativity of the teacher. So personally, I believe that even if it may not be directly connected to the topic, but still it depends upon on how the teacher will use the content so that these strategies can be utilized. So for example, interpret map. How can you integrate map interpretation in your topic, no? Whatever your topic is. Okay? So another one is that in the simplest cases, this might simply mean changing the way that you ask questions that prompt students' responses. So for example, you are conducting a recitation and you're asking questions, no? So instead of asking questions, why don't you ask them to illustrate their ideas? So sometimes, no, when you ask your students to summarize the idea, you'll just tell them, okay, class, summarize that in 5 sentences, okay, or summarize that in two big words. So instead of doing such, why not tell them to, okay, class, as part of your summary of the lesson, I want you to illustrate what you have learned. So it is quite different, right? So just imagine. So for example, your topic is about let's say history of the Philippines. You are talking about the dates, or talking about what happened during those important dates, and then as part of the summary, you will just tell them, okay, class, based on what you have learned, I want you to summarize it by illustrating what you have learned. So just imagine that. So it is not just a declarative, because it is declarative. They will just tell you, all right, so this is the date, these are the events. So that is declarative. But what we are talking right now is procedural knowledge. So activities that provide the problem, the procedures the students should follow, the type of analysis to be conducted, will leave little room for the students to contribute original thoughts. So consider adapting open-ended questions where the problem is presented, but some combination of procedures, method of analysis, and or communication of results are left for the students to design. So I would like to highlight on the open-ended questions. No, so sometimes we ask questions that are with specific answers. If it is procedural knowledge that you would like to target, so you can adapt open-ended questions wherein when you ask questions to your students, no, it's up to them on the kind of responses that they will give you. Or let's say you will ask them to watch a certain movie with no ending at all. So they will be the one to create the ending. So or you will present a procedure, but at the end of it, so there are options on the kind of procedure that they would like to follow. So in that case, they can be able to analyze the design, they can be able to also to communicate the result among themselves, and they can be able to express the kind of ideas that they would like to express. So students are encouraged to question the assumptions behind an activity or to consider the next step in a procedure. So sometimes no, when we ask our students to do activities, um, sometimes or most of the time it is quite step by step. Step one, you do this. Step one, step two, you do that, and so on and so forth up to the finishing steps. Now, if it is procedural knowledge, as a future teacher, you have to consider um, asking them about what they are thinking about the procedure, if it is correct, or what are the other steps that can be taken aside from those that are given already. Another one is that you can also ask them to question what you are actually saying. No, so you may encourage them to challenge the information that you are giving them. So in that case, you may give false information, no, just for the sake of procedural knowledge activity. You may give false information, and then they have to probe or disprove such information. No, again, this will depend on the topics that that you are discussing. In sciences kasi, this can be done, no? Like for example, you are conducting an experimentation, and then there is this procedure. So it can be challenged also. You can ask them to, oh, what do you think will happen if instead of 5 grams, you will make it 15 grams, or instead of 10 kilos, you will just make it 5 kilograms. Or instead of using water, why not use alcohol? What will be the result? Or another one is that, let's say there are 5 groups of students, and then they have different results or outcomes. So to they can challenge each other, no? So one group should prove or disprove the conclusion of another group. So something like that. So students evaluate if the response they generated makes sense in the context of the underlying concept. So one thing that can also be done is that whenever you ask, there are cases when you ask your students to answer, you may call another student to evaluate the answer of their classmates. So it can be done like this. Let's say, Virgilio, can you answer this? And then after the answer of Virgilio, you will call Paul. Okay, Paul, do you agree on the answer of Virgilio? If yes, why? If not, why? So something like that. So that is actually evaluation. And then Socratic questioning strategies can be used to generate discussion after completion of an in-class active learning opportunity. So Socratic questioning is like question and answer portion. No? But before you do that, make sure that it is already just a pile of questions. Now, you can also use minute paper to describe the main idea from the lesson. So minute papers, small, no, meaning to say small or short write up about describe or description of about the main idea from the lesson. So let students evaluate evidence for concepts and offer alternative ideas. So one thing that can be done like you are computing in mathematics or mathematical concepts, and then you will ask them, oh, all right, can you provide another way of solving the problem? So that's alternative ideas. So that is all about procedural knowledge. So you have to analyze your specific field of specialization, and I want you to look into the kind of um, topics, no, wherein there could be declarative, procedural, or functional knowledge. So let us now look into functional knowledge. So any piece of stored information that can be adapted and applied to different circumstances or are transferable to different settings. So we have to accept the fact that there are knowledge or information that is only applicable to that particular field. So for example, let's say you are cooking, no? You are cooking adobo. So it can only be done there, the step-by-step process. But if you are going to look into the context on how to follow directions or how to follow step-by-step procedures, cooking adobo, the knowledge there of following directions can be applied to different circumstances. For example, um, when you learn how to follow directions, you can also apply that in other fields. Let's say you are reading a map, no, or you are um, you are investigating something, or you are conducting research, no. So as long as the knowledge or the information that you are using can be utilized from a specific field of specialization, can be applied to different situations. So let's say your knowledge in mathematical computation, so it can be used in uh, in other aspects, like let's say in buying food in the stores, or in counting the change, or in counting things, no. So as long as, again, the knowledge can be applied to different circumstances. Okay, so I think most of the knowledge that we have, if not all, no, it depends upon on how we use that as functional knowledge. For example, your knowledge about grammar, no. So when do you use, or when can we use this correct usage of grammar, or this right grammar, no. So when is it only in the English subject, or is it in the day-to-day activity? So it's like that, no. So that's why the term is functional. So are you using your knowledge for you to function as a human being in the community, or in the social world, or in the society? So something like that. So make sure that when you become a teacher, or if you're a teacher right now, make sure that the knowledge that, or in the information that you're sharing with your students, will not just stay as declarative or procedural. It should be transformed into functional knowledge. Because um, if your students will not use this as functional knowledge, time will come that they will forget all those information that you told them, or those information or knowledge that they have learned from you. So they have to use the context of that information in dealing with day-to-day activities. So how people acquire and categorize data? So knowledge that is concrete and usable rather than abstract and theoretical. So if you'll notice, no, there are people who are very good in memorizing things, but are poor in applying the knowledge that they have. So there are people who are not that good in memorizing things, but they are very practical. So the practical use of knowledge is part of functional knowledge. So there are other ways of classifying knowledge. So episodic knowledge, biological memories, reflecting not only what happened, but also where and when it happened. Can you still recall what happened to you when you are 5 years old, 4 years old, 7 years old? When and where? No? Something like that. So another one is semantic knowledge. Well, I would like to go back to episodic knowledge. Um, I can tell that Although this is just a joke, no. So female, they have quite, high episodic knowledge, so they can always remember the date and the time. No, so you have to be careful, because they can easily recall the specific day and time. No, so they have a very good episodic knowledge. Well, I hope that you know what I mean. Now, another one is semantic knowledge. So deals with memories and information, but not tied to personal biographies. It organizes knowledge about facts, concepts, generalizations, and their association. So when we speak of not tied to personal biography, so semantic knowledge is out of the episodic knowledge. It is out of your personal knowledge, or personal biographies, but it has something to do with the facts that you know, with the concept that you know, how you generalize things, and association. But when we speak of association, it is how these facts and concepts are connected with each other. So that's it for these categories of knowledge. No, so thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you.